order. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next is public comment. It's 5 minutes we allow for the public to make comments. The commission, we have one at the beginning of the meeting, at the end of the meeting. So everybody knows we don't have any public here today, but sometimes we do. And it's always nice to have people come up and give us their input. Okay. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the last commission meeting.
I so move, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, assume you're ready to vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Passes 3-0. Commissioner comments and committee reports.
I have none.
I had a project concern, but I had a temporary cap come off, and I called the dentist, and make a long story short, time I got done, it was too late. And I understand they only had 4 people show up, so they didn't have a quorum, so they didn't have a meeting.
Okay. You're going to reschedule then?
They're going to reschedule, and Shelley said she'd be back with me. I don't know, was you there that day, Jack, or not?
No, I didn't.
Okay, new business before the board. County Sheriff, you're in reporting update.
Wasn't planning on being here, so I asked to show you guys a copy of the report. It's just the annual report that's required to turn in. For the sheriff is required to turn in Kansas a forfeiture report for seized goods that we end up doing a forfeiture process on. What money is, and actually the law currently states that just the monies that are deposited and expended out of the Special Law Enforcement Fund. There were none expended, but there were some deposited. I did attach a list of all the pending ones that we have and the ones that are completed. So that's a little more than what we really need to. This is the last year for this report to be turned in, or they changed the law to where we'll report all this to the KBI now. So we won't be preparing the report for the commissioners. It'll always be on the year-end report.
This is something we just received in file, Pat?
I think it is. Yes.
Right.
There's a few at the legislature. There's some issues with what the money is being used for, so they want to, if they request to see if we turn it in, the clerk will have that information.
Any questions?
I don't have anything.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank
you. Other new business for the board.
You too.
Thank you.
This would be the appointment of local attorneys to provide contracted legal service to the county. We have one from John Kurth, J. David Ferris, Kelly Formeyer, and Rex Lane. Chair will entertain a motion to approve these contracts.
Are the contracts the same price?
No, the contracts are substantially similar as they have been in last year. In prior years, there is a $50 per month increase that was part of the budget process. That's accounted for.
Remember that discussion.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it, Mr. Chairman.
Let's move in a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I ask everybody to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Passes 3-0.
I've got another new
Okay,
item on the agenda.
any key appointees?
And that is the appointment of an interim Atchison County Health Officer. Her name is Angela Wright. I'm on that board, and we are in the process of hiring that position, and this is just the interim to status over until the new hire can take her place.
Is that a motion?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I assume you're ready to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Passes 3-0. Next I have, we had a discussion this morning about an elected official that we felt their salary was a little under what other counties in the area are. And we're going to give her a $2,000 annual raise effective at the next pay period. Her salary would go to $40,093. Can I have a motion for that?
I'll make that motion. You just make sure it's right.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion or comments? Hearing none, I should be ready to vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Passes 3-0. Let me see. We have a order number 2019 of the Board of County Commissioners of Atchison County do hereby order Michelle Phillips, County Clerk, as per K.S.A. 45-406, K.A.R. 53-2, 134, 53-2, 116, 53-2, 075, and 53-097. Amendments there to dispose of records. The witness, we do under to set our hands on the 16th day of January. It'll actually be the 29th day of January. So this is basically allows the city clerk to clean up on old records, such as homestead annual reports from 15, 16, 17, bank reconciliation reports from 2014. Just a way to keep our courthouse clean of old records. Are these all electronically also?
No.
Not,
Some
they're
of those
just
are not,
destroyed.
no.
Okay.
The prior years are superseded when the new years come in, so therefore they're not needed.
I entertain a motion to approve order number 2019-1.
I so moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, it should be ready to vote. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Passes 3-0. Seth is to be here to discuss the swab meeting.
Let me see, I was looking through the bills here. Water bill for the city of Effingham. Previous balance 152, which didn't get paid. I was just wondering if that was something that didn't get sent out, or is that the way you would read that? I mean, is there no late charge in this? Received in 12/17. I was just wondering why there's a 152 previous balance still on that. But that's, and this would just be for the ambulance center and the noxious weed. I mean, it's a sizable bill, $436.
Yeah, but no, the leaks at the transfer, the
Yeah.
recycling bin, it wasn't out there.
Who would we ask about that? I mean, I was just wondering if something got.
What's this here? Corey?
Corey. Okay, I'll just ask him.
Seth, come on up. Tell us about this contract for,
Alright, so that contract is for Swab Eaton Engineering Firm for the 2020 off-system bridge project. It's basically just their contract to design the bridge for us.
this is an 80-20 split.
That cost right there will be 100% by the county. The actual project cost will be 80-20 split with the state.
Okay. So we have two contracts.
It's the same contract, just 2 copies of it.
Okay. Where's our price?
The amount should be the second page, I believe. The paragraph will state. Or on the first.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
So the chair will entertain a motion to enter an agreement with Swab Eaton for engineering on an 80-20 bridge share in the amount of $55,400. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Is this, the state awarded them, or do we put this up for bids, or?
What we do is we put in an application, which Swab Eaton did for us. We won them bid. We can choose any engineering firm we'd like to design this. With that, then they fill a contract. We have the rights to negotiate if we'd like to, but that's been roughly the average cost for all of our off systems. So.
Any other questions? I should be ready to vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Pass 3-0. Old and unfinished business before the board. Anybody have anything, or?
Get the exchange thing signed. The exchange bank thing. Oh, that's true.
Okay.
I guess you can-
I left that out. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna have you keep 2 of the checks, and then I'm gonna take 1 today.
Got a chance to review it, or?
Well, he said it was the same as what we've done in the past. So, that looks right. There's you had approved earlier lease purchase financing through Exchange Bank and Trust, and the actual contract documents are now prepared. That's for the Bobcat and the Mack truck and a pickup truck are the 3 things, and the total amount is $156,000. No, that's not it.
That's just 1.
156,862 and 40,314.62. We have 2 checks. Seth had noted to me that they had budgeted for the payment this year, so the first payment will actually come in March instead of a year from now, which will save a little bit of money. But everything appears to be in order. It just needs the chairman's signature.
I would entertain a motion for the chairman to,
I got one question. You had mentioned that you thought you may have enough money to pay for the Bobcat out of money left over, but that's gone, or?
What we still have money for is the bucket truck, or the sign truck / bucket truck that we were budgeting for last year that we did not find. So I still like to keep that reserve there to find that truck, because we were still in need of that.
Okay, I'd have been around for sure.
okay. I would entertain
I misspoke. There is a resolution that authorizes it,
Okay.
which has all 3 of your signatures on it.
hand me the resolution, or? I would entertain to lease resolution. I don't see a number on it.
Resolution number is going to be 2019-1447.
2019
417.
1447.
1447.
The chair entertain a motion to approve resolution 2019-1417, allowing the final agreement for the leases of the 3 pieces of equipment we just mentioned.
I shall move, Mr. Chairman.
It's been moved. Do I have a second?
I can second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I should be ready to vote.
So the checks you have are for our first payment?
This check is from exchange to the companies that we purchased from. So
I see.
the truck's coming tomorrow. I'm taking that check to deliver. When the 2 invoices come in, both we'll deliver those to them. So I'm gonna let Michelle keep track of those in her state.
Okay.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All passes 3-0.
Alright. I did do some research on Mr. Flynn's concern that we received a letter on. Does anybody have a phone number to contact him at? I do not have any other way.
There was a phone number on that letter.
No, there's no address.
There was just
Oh, there was just-
I
I
would
didn't-
prefer to talk to him in person or over the phone instead of a letter wrote. But,
Okay. Yeah, I saw him Saturday night and I told him we'd be contacted.
okay.
I don't have his number.
Okay, I'll see if I can track one down again. I looked in the phone book, one phone book.
If you call Bellevue Country Club, which probably, they're probably not open today. He works there, so they probably will.
Okay.
To get a number there. Or Kevin Van Dyke's got, he fills in at the beat counter once in a while.
Okay,
I have a
sounds
number.
good. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do I get that signed document back? Oh, you got it. Okay, that's fine.
And you're
Michelle's.
Thank you.
Do we have to sign in the place there, or you do, or Pat, you've got all these signatures on that. Just
There's
one?
only one that requires all 3 of your signatures. The rest of
All the rest
require-
require mine? Okay. We'll move on to that after the meeting. Any other unfinished business before the board? County councilor updates.
Well, we have talked about several counties in the past year have experienced kind of an upheaval, a local upheaval about what to do with wind energy farms that are coming in. And then kind of on a more nationwide basis, there are solar energy farms that are being put in at places. So I thought it would probably be a good idea to have at least a little bit of discussion about what, if anything, Atchison County wanted to do sort of on a just-in-case basis. The state of Kansas is geographically situated such that we are the #1 state for the potential to have wind energy production. There's mapping that's been done, and there's a sort of starts in the panhandle of Texas where the best places are. Covers most about 3/4 of the state of Kansas, about 3/4 of the state of Nebraska, part of South Dakota, North Dakota, and a little bit up into Montana. There are areas also that are on the 2 coasts that are considered to be really pretty good with consistent winds. The ones that are further north, I think, are further away from the grid, so which is why the lower ones, with Kansas and Oklahoma, I think, from what I understand, those maybe have some advantage for electrical production. Several counties have been caught off guard by it, that they weren't ready, didn't have anything in the way of planning that had been done before someone showed up and started erecting the turbines. And if you've driven out I-70, you get to about the city of Ellsworth, and there are fields of, I don't know, at least dozens, if not hundreds of those. And honestly, I think they're kind of majestic looking and impressive. But there's more that comes with them than I guess at first meets the eye. That is that there's a burden on the roads, that the roads have to be developed to a certain degree to get the equipment built and to get it put in place. And there has to be, well, there doesn't have to be, but whether you want to have some limitation on how close those can be built to property lines, whether you want limitation on how close they're built to roads, whether you want limitations on the amount of noise that they can generate, and things like that. Whether or not you're going to make a requirement that when they're no longer used, that they be taken down instead of just left, or maybe just the pole left. Those are all issues that have come up. I think Butler, Geary, and Riley counties were the first counties that I know of that had big issues with it. More recently, Harper County and Pratt County, and currently Sumner County, Jackson County, and Nemaha are all having discussions about how to deal with potential wind farm. And I think we're probably going to see, as technology improves, those same discussions with regard to solar farms, where just maybe a 40-acre tract may be devoted to having dozens of panels placed on them to go onto the grid. Kansas is also a good state to do this in, because by statute we essentially require the power companies to purchase back electricity that's developed by individuals by spinning the meter backwards. And so that's not the case in every state. We have no zoning in Atchison County, with the exception of a location permit. And the location permitting is extremely rudimentary. The only criteria we have is not built in a floodplain. So we don't issue permits for building within a floodplain. And that was part of FEMA's requirements for floodplain management, that we have something like that in place. And we've had that in place for several years. But that's the only land use regulation that might fall under the category of zoning that we have.
Would nuisance complaint fall into any of that regulation?
Well, I guess that is a land use regulation. It doesn't have anything to do with, that's on the condition of the property. It doesn't have anything to do with where the property is located. But yeah, it is, in some sense.
I doubt if there's any language devoted to noise. I mean, I think that's one of the big concerns in Brown County anyway, is the noise and the flicker rate from the sun shining through those windmills. If you're in the path of that there's a lot of complaints. I think there'd probably have to be language in your nuisance ordinance that would deal with those types of of nuisances.
I think there are probably a lot of ways to skin the cat, if you will. Just to really kind of get it out there for the discussion, there's been a hesitancy in Atchison County to adopt anything with the Z word, with zoning. And I think the fear is that it would be overly restrictive, or perhaps even confiscatory. There have been, when I was in law school, there was in Douglas County, which is where law school was located, there was a historic preservation group that was trying to buy some acreage that had never ever been plowed. And they weren't able to come to an agreement or raise the funds to purchase it. So through zoning, they attempted to zone an area to say that you couldn't plow any land within this area. And the week before that was to come to the commission, the owner of that land went out and plowed it because he, and in my opinion, that would have been sort of a taking of the property. He would have given away his right to be able to use the property as he saw fit. And I think that's a concern that people have, is that with zoning, they might not be able to use their property as they want to use it, or do the things that they typically do. Zone on the property. Zoning is really any regulation by any government is sort of a weighing of interests of which do we want to protect, the landowner's right to do whatever they want on their property, or the neighbor's right to peaceful enjoyment of their property. And the general concept behind zoning is that you want harmonious uses of land next to one another. You wouldn't want to grant a permit to set off fireworks next to an oil refinery. That sort of simple thing. You wouldn't want hog farms next to housing subdivisions because of the smell. Well, and other reasons. But that always comes with a weighing of interests, because sometimes the hog farms have been there for a long time. Sometimes they've been planned for a long time. Sometimes they're expanded. And I don't really mean to single out that use, but it's one that has a lot of case law behind it. There is also, I know from representing the county for several years, when telecommunications company builds a tower, that there are frequently people that are upset that it's going in near their residence, that they want there to be a tower, but they don't want it next to their land. They want it moved back. And zoning is one way that you would have some control over where those things are placed, how far away they are from property lines, etc. And I definitely understand both sides of the issue from the landowner of being able to use the property as they see fit, and I also understand the neighbors not wanting to have it right in their backyard, as it were. So you have several choices. One of them is to do nothing, and which is the status quo. Leave things as they are. If someone decides to try to build one of these projects here, there wouldn't be any. It would just be the market forces that would dictate whether they could do that or not. There is, I guess, a second choice would be to adopt some sort of zoning. That's not just a simple thing. That isn't something where you just say to your county councilor, "Hey, draw us up some zoning and come back next week with it."
Couldn't we just pass a resolution or and deal with that without going into zoning?
Yes, you can. You could go into a licensing requirement for commercial electrical production or something like that. And that is a sort of zoning, but it's just singling out a single industry. And that can be done. Both having a permitting process and having a zoning process will require some work by the county, and probably spending some money, maybe hiring additional staff, but at least hiring some people to give advice to us that have been through the process to guide us through it, and what are the issues that we should be on the lookout for. That would be less of that if we went with the third way of doing the licensing, requirement than the second way of doing zoning. The process, if I could just sort of tell you what the process is for establishing zoning, even if it's something that you're not interested in doing. The process generally requires that you form what's known as a planning commission that does a study of the land uses that are currently in existence and comes up with a plan of what do we want our county to look like in 20 years, and what sort of regulations do we want to have on new development. Do we want to try to encourage residential in this area? Do we want to try to encourage industrial in a certain area? That sort of thing. And then they come up with a proposed plan, a comprehensive plan it's called. And there are several public hearings that go through that process with developing a comprehensive plan. And then after it's approved by the planning commission, it comes before the board of county commissioners to be approved or modified or sent back for revision. The part and parcel of that are whether you want to have subdivision regulations, which deal specifically with development of residential real estate. It can be part of zoning. It doesn't have to be part of zoning. And there are several different ways to go about doing zoning as well. But it's a process that would likely take more than a year to do, with planning that goes into it and the study and the public hearings that you would go through. The third is to do a regulation, a licensing requirement of some sort, and that would require some additional staff for the county to be able to process applications, and also to develop what you want in your application, what things you want to require from someone who wants to build a wind farm or a solar farm. Because it's been done recently in several other counties, I think you can get some good advice from those counties on what things that they ran into, what issues they ran into, what the complaints were, and that sort of thing, what they did right and what they did wrong. The permits usually in the permitting process, you usually try to differentiate between someone putting up a turbine for their own domestic energy production, a single family windmill, and you see some of those, and the commercial ones that tend to be much bigger, higher, and there generally isn't much regulation on the smaller ones, although setbacks, that is, requiring a specific distance, a minimum distance from a property line, tends to be pretty common, so that they aren't built 10 feet from a property line. In the planning process also, if you have roads that you think that you're going to want to improve or make bigger, you might want to put bigger setback requirements in, so that if you do decide to build a road there, you don't have to pay to move a whole bunch of stuff, whether it's houses or wind turbines. So yeah, that would take, I think, also some additional expertise that we may not have on staff, and probably additional, I don't know that it would necessarily be a full-time person, but at least somebody that's on contract to review any of those applications as they would come in. You can, as part of that permitting process, require that the applicant pay the cost of doing those reviews, so they aren't 100% a burden on the county, but you already have to have done the research and in developing what your rules are going to be before you create your application, and that's not something that you can recoup from applicants. And then I guess the last thing that you can do, and it's been done by some counties, is to just simply say that it's prohibited, that you won't allow wind energy production, commercial wind energy production in your county. Those types of moratoriums are subject to challenge in court unless they're reasonably limited for a period of time, essentially to give you time to study an issue. If something's coming in, you could prohibit it, but if you're prohibiting it for 6 months or a year until you get your regulation in place, that's probably reasonable and probably would pass a court review. Simply saying we're never going to allow commercial renewable energy production in our county forever probably wouldn't be politically popular, and also probably would not pass a court review. So I don't have a preference really on what we do, and we may not have to do something. Atchison County is at the periphery of that really great area, so we may not be quite as likely to get selected. Although I understand the process is they come out and put up a sort of a really big tall crane that has a little propeller at the top that just measures the wind speed, and they leave that there for several months and keep data on how much wind is blowing and how often, and before they make the determination about investing significant money towards building the turbines, because they're not, I don't know what they cost, but they're not cheap, I'm sure. And if those things popped up, then you could maybe do something to react to them. That's a little more reactionary than proactive, but it is possible to do something along those lines. So
I've got a couple things that I'd like to maybe put out there. I would like to maybe see us, I know there's a standard from the industry that where the setbacks are, but I think it's a minimal. They wouldn't put it 5 feet from the road just on their own standards, but I believe other counties are enacting larger setbacks to protect, your neighbors that have a house that is going to be very close to, that wouldn't prohibit someone that has, if they wanted one in their backyard and it's their own house, that they could put it as close as they wanted to. But if you have a neighbor's house or thing, or that it would make for better neighbors, that you would have a higher standard for putting one in next to a neighbor's house or road or business. Another thing is that it's being talked about is the decibel level. I don't know how that is measured. I don't know if there's certain decibels that could be put a standard on that, because there's is it subsonic? I'm not for sure of the terminology. That it's not really audible to human hearing, but it can pose a health hazard. That if there's this noise level and I don't know what the standards are, like I said, but I think that's something that maybe could be addressed. And also is another issue that they're dealing with is the end of life for these structures. That there'd be something in place that once, whatever the length of the structure would be, 60 years, 50 years, I don't know what it is. I think there's varying estimates on what that is, that there's a fund or that to tear them down, raise them, whatever it takes to get rid of them, so we're not sitting here with, okay, we're done with them, the company pulls out, and we've got, 100 or 5, it don't matter what it is, so you don't have these carcasses of old wind turbines sitting there. That's probably extremely expensive to tear down, and the landowners, if that would be at their cost, it could be really expensive. I don't know what route we would take to do any of that. I could think it'd be more research than anything.
And that also usually involves them putting money aside, not just simply promising to do it. Because
yes.
Companies can just disappear, go bankrupt. But cash doesn't usually go bankrupt, or bonds don't go bankrupt usually.
I know we're maybe not in the prime area for this, but as technology has improved, sometimes the technology will improve to the point where they can make it feasible that, it might be 5 or 10 years to have a breakthrough, and then all of a sudden they come in. Once they have leases here, it's much harder to put a different standard or enforce this. You couldn't enforce the new setback. When they came in, it was 500 feet, and now you're saying it has to be 1,000. Well, that would prohibit them from maybe erecting a turbine or whatever other industry, solar or whatever we're going to include if we do anything. B, then they'd say, well, then you're prohibiting us from using our lease, and we could be liable in a lawsuit if we try to enforce a new standard, the way I understood it.
Sounds like we need somebody to help us.
Well, we would. Roger Denton, who is on staff, does have some experience with city planning. There are also there are people around city planners.
Are there people at Mark?
Probably. I haven't checked that.
Probably are. No, I don't know wind production, but solar production inside where they are located. Sure come into play. Now this sounds a little bit off the beaten track, but most counties who end up with the wind farms get a payment in lieu of taxes, which has allowed them to lower ad valorem taxes. Now I understand some of those counties, the school districts have come in behind them and said, oh, we want some of that money.
Oh.
And I think if it is lieu of taxes, it goes to the county. There's really what to do to protect ourselves.
Right, it generally does, yes.
I think they could go either route. Now, the commissioner that I was talking to said they were going to do payment in lieu of taxes, but a lot of theirs had early leases, and there was a complete, the state had imposed a tax abatement for them, and they will never be able to collect property tax on those. So I think that is 2016 or previous. Anything after 2016 is subject to granted a 10-year tax abatement. So they've chosen to do a payment in lieu of taxes, which would start immediately, so they could start using some of those funds. But I believe that's also the contract could be voided at any time by the wind farm. So it's not if things got difficult, it might be revoked.
Well, it's something we need to, that's another piece we don't understand too.
Yeah.
So it's not that we need to learn a lot of stuff.
I think it is something that would take a lot of planning. I'm glad you pointed that out. It's not an issue that I thought about.
Well, I learned in Boy Scouts, we need to be prepared.
Well, this sounded like it was, it really intrigued me, and I started, looking into it a little bit and contacted this other commissioner, and they're going through it. he said it's one of those things 10 years ago wouldn't have even thought of it being an issue or a problem.
It is a new world order.
And a lot of this, and I hadn't really thought of it. A lot of people, oh yeah, let's sign up and we're going to start getting these leases and we're going to get paid. Well, not to say that they really didn't care about their neighbor, but they never thought about how that was going to affect their neighbor, that these are going to be built real close to their house and there's a noise level and there's all of these problems, and now it's pitting neighbor against neighbor, and it doesn't make for good county relations any which way. So I mean, I'd like to just kind of know what the basic standards are, or maybe if we would need to raise them to a higher setback level and do some of the basics on this, or at least find out what we need to know, is where I'm at.
This commissioner you talked to, are they doing wind power now? Is this new?
Yes, it's
That
a lot of them.
surprised me. That surprised me because they found out that there's so much maintenance to wind power that they're gradually going by the wayside.
Well, they're expanding. This is Nemaha County, and they had their initial footprint was leased before, the 2016 or before, so they will never see property tax on that. Then they expanded it outside of that, and those leases came later. And so they could either wait on the 10 years to be up and collect property tax, or they can do the payment in lieu of taxes. And they kind of reached a tentative deal, or there's an offer on the table. That's what it sounded like it was going to happen. And but the wind farm, when they came in to build these, were coming in with their own engineers to check the bridges and the corners. They had to re-engineer roads and to just get these huge pieces of equipment in, and the actual blades and everything are on these extra long trucks, and they've got to be able to get to them. And of course, during that, they anticipate if they're going to come in like now and would be trying to erect these, a lot of these roads that are muddy underneath, and you bring this big equipment, there's going to be ruts. Now, there's an agreement for them to bring the road back up to standard, but you could have a lot of damage on roads. You can't just limit these companies to, okay, one dry time in the summer. Well, when is that? They can't work according to that. So even if you're promised or have a contract to get paid back for this damage, it could cause a lot of problems in the interim. I mean, it's a big deal. I think that maybe we contact Mark and see if there's any help through Mark, if they've got any.
I think Roger also can answer that one pretty good too. So I go out and talk to Roger, or Pat can go talk to Roger, whatever.
Okay.
You want to talk to Roger? Or you want me to talk to him?
Sure. Yeah, maybe we can both go down after the meeting.
Okay, let's do that. Okay. Anything else, Pat?
I don't think so. No, I don't.
Okay. Any executive sessions? It's not, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did it. We received a letter about the former district coroner. Is somebody to deal with this? Or there's a letter just asking essentially whether Dr. Mitchell had ever been in trouble. Was he in good standing? Was he disciplined? Those sorts of things. But it wasn't really addressed to anybody.
Wasn't there a
The
time
letter was
period?
addressed to the Board of County Commissioners.
I'm sorry?
The letter was addressed to the Board of County
Right.
Commissioners.
Didn't we have some problems with his timeliness?
Well, I think, yes, there had been. That's not what they were asking about there. But there was some delay. I think a lot of that happened sort of as he was leaving or after he left. And you don't appoint the district commissioner, Leavenworth County Commission does, because it's a district-wide position and they have a larger population. So I'm not sure that you would know a lot, but
I could not accurately answer those questions.
yeah, and I'm
So I'm
not
better
sure.
off not to answer them, I think, because
Well, I'm not sure I could either, and to answer them, I would probably ask Leavenworth County.
We'll let Michelle answer and you can sign off on it.
we don't have to answer it.
I would say since
No, I
we're,
don't think you have to.
Well, it's in Leavenworth County's hands.
I was going to say it would be Leavenworth County. Now, unless we had a specific known case that fell out, that we of something being wrong that you could fill out. I would
Well,
say other than that, we don't have any
We had
say.
2 funeral homes come up and to have complaints. Wasn't it 2 or 3?
Well, yeah, it was
2 I
at
know.
least 2, yeah. But we had concerns about how long some death certificates were taking.
They're all tied to a certain type of
They
event. It was usually an accident that needed a
It had to do
autopsy.
with, in the autopsy, doing toxicology, I think. But some of them were seemed
Well, that's
unreasonably
okay.
long, over half a year.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of them was maybe 9 months, and they needed the death certificate before they could process life insurance applications and things like that. So
I would recommend we file and respond.
Yes.
I would think it would be appropriate to send a letter back explaining that.
Well, I'm sure Leavenworth County got the same letter, didn't they, or a different type?
I'm assuming, but
Do you want to send the letter?
I'd be happy to. Yeah.
It's probably best to give them some kind of response so they know that we got it.
The chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so moved, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second.
Assuming you're ready to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes 3-0.
You went through all this and we took care of it.
We did.